Almost done. There we go.
Can you hear our lovely car?
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
If you run a service drive, you know these days, first impressions matter. But when your advisors are tied up with inbound phone calls, they tend to neglect their other, more important duties. And did you know 75% of all service calls are frequently asked questions and routine requests? Still, the average dealer misses up to 30% of inbound calls, adding up to a ton of missed service opportunity and increased customer churn. 68% of callers actually go elsewhere if they can't get through, which means you could be losing $60,000 to $70,000 every month in service revenue simply from missing calls. So who will pick up? Introducing Brooke.
Hi there.
Your best service scheduling assistant. Brooke is the first intelligent digital voice assistant to answer, handle, and appoint all of your inbound service calls. Hiring Brooke means absolutely no call goes unanswered, boosting your customer satisfaction and reducing your overhead costs. And talking to Brooke is like talking to a friend with human-level understanding in a friendly conversational voice. Her conversational intelligence is built on millions of actual service industry conversations, making her the easiest onboard you'll ever have. She can handle any volume of calls and follows your policies every step of the way, 24/7. That means even when the lights are off, Brooke is always on.
And I can do it without missing a beat.
You really do check all the boxes. Book with Brooke today. Visit Brooke.ai or call 866-942-1236. Finally, the perfect match.
See that light above the bathroom door over there? That's a big time saver for our technicians and other recon staff. The light goes on when the bathroom is occupied. Now techs keep working until the light goes out. Then they know for sure the room is empty. And when they're busy there, they're also catching up on the news. Not bad news, but news they need for the job. I post these where they can't be missed. Too often, the search for the right product for valuable time. This inexpensive detailer's cart organizes supplies. Now techs lay their hands on what they need without delay. We got these time savers from Rapid Recon, the reconditioning software company that's always defining better reconditioning solutions for dealerships like yours. When the goal is to get cars through recon in 72 hours or less, every step, every minute, every better decision made helps towards that goal. For more recon efficiency ideas like these, talk to the recon experts at rapidrecon.com.
Bad timing.
Good morning.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for your patience and watching our sponsors' videos there. We can't do this without them, and we do appreciate them. And if you're ever bored, sometimes just contact somebody that's got a Brooke AI there, and you get it. They'll can talk to you. Trust me, I've tried it.
So Jeff, maybe you could talk a little bit about what we're doing in Toronto.
Perfect. Well, we'll in just gosh, I guess roughly 2 weeks, we'll be in Toronto at the Canada Used Car Week conference, and we're looking forward to it. And we're going to do some random interviews. We walk around and see all our friends, old and new. And then on the last day, we're actually conducting I always get confused as to what we call it, but we have a session there. It's probably the best one, the Subprime Expert Show, and where we're going to have Kim McPherson from Buy It Smart Auto, who's a lady-operated subprime operation in the very, very far east part of Canada, in the Maritimes, as well as gentlemen from a big subprime operation in the Toronto area, and somebody you guys are now familiar with as you watch us, Larry Feldman's going to talk to us on his position of things on subprime. So if you get to go there, it's a heck of a thing. It's the biggest thing in Canada, and it's not as big as anything in Vegas, but what the heck, it's pretty big. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's Approval Genie, Buy It Smart Auto. You're familiar with Kim, I'm sure. And then Larry, we're going to be talking about subprime. We're going to be doing a panel. Should be pretty interesting. I think they get about 500 dealers or so in Toronto for this, maybe a little bit more than that. And it's about used cars, which we know is all the hot topic. And then from a book perspective, I was kind of hard pressed to find some books, so I found a few. Gender Sell, How to Sell to the Opposite Sex by Judith Tingley, PhD. Influence is Your Superpower by Joe Chance. And then The Hawk Method.
Zoe Chance.
Sorry?
Zoe Chance. You do not want to
Zoe
make
Chance.
that mistake.
My mistake. And Eric Humberman, The Hawk Method, the 3 principles of marketing that made over 3,000 brands soar. So if you're interested in marketing, there's some great books for you. Go ahead with the disclaimer, Jeff.
And to say the disclaimer again, the opinions shared here today are those of our guests and not necessarily of the Auto Hub show and Ian Nethercon and Jeff Polo. And please read this online for all the details.
And the show today is inclusive marketing, so let's get into it.
Well, here we are. It's the Inclusive Marketing Show. It's a very interesting term, because we originally started this show with the intention of showcasing who's better at it. But the fact is in the reality, even though our opening video, which isn't shown on online or recordings, discussed how you have to market differently to different groups of people. And the fact is, it's not just men and women; it's a variety of other things. So it is a question of inclusive marketing, because the challenge that we all face is, what do you do and where do you do it? And we're going to touch on that today. And we have a very, very great group of guests, which I'm extremely excited to have here. And first of all, we have Claudia Sciamma. I hope I get it right.
That's correct.
Hey! Which is the Auto Consumer Goods Managing Director for Google Canada. She is based in what we Canadians call the self-proclaimed center of the universe, Toronto. Claudia, please say hello. Introduce yourself briefly to our audience.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here with you during this panel. So I am pretty new to Canada. I'm pretty new to Toronto. We moved here 4 years ago, but I have been working for Google for the last 15 years of my life back in Brazil. So I started back in Brazil. I'm Brazilian. So I worked in Google Brazil for 11 years, leading the retail partnerships, like the partnerships with the main retailers in Brazil. And I took the challenge to move to Toronto 4 years ago with my big family, husband and 4 kids, to Toronto to lead the partnerships with like global manufacturers, among them all like the OEMs. So I'm here. So I'm new in the car industry, but I'm an old digital and technology professional.
Terrific. Well, thank you for taking the time. We hope you're enjoying the winters.
Getting used to.
You get used to it. Next, we have with us the gentleman in the room, Don Graff, who's the president of Don Graff Automotive Advisors. He's a friend of our show, and he's from Bonita Springs, Florida. Don, please say hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to see everybody here. Should be a very interesting show. As researching inclusive marketing and exclusive marketing, It's very interesting how different brands look at diversity, ethnicity, and gender identity. And I'm anxious to hear everyone's views on the panel on these issues and how they see different companies identifying issues and being able to reach out to different parts of the universe.
Terrific. Well, thanks for spending the time to be with us. We have Monica Beer, who is the CEO of Digital Monk Marketing. Boy, too many M's there. In Calgary, Alberta, what us Westerners call the next opinion of center of the universe. Please say hi, Monica, and quick introduction.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm the CEO of Digital Monk Marketing. We've been in the automotive space for over a decade now, really understanding the trends and how things are moving and shifting. As we all know, the last 2 years have been crazy, and now we're adjusting to the new normal. I hate even saying that. This will be a really interesting conversation. It's been something that's been top of mind in marketers' minds, and it'll be interesting to see everyone's point of view.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And then, of course, we have with us Brooke Furness, the president and founder of BC Consultants, not BZ, seeing as how we're talking Canada, the States, and in Chicago, Illinois. And by the way, she is an athletic shoe connoisseur. Brooke, please say hi and introduce yourself.
Yes, yeah, good job on that. I'll take all of that. Yes, 100% everything there. I've got my company, BT Consultants Group. Also have got a podcast, so we do a little bit of everything. And yeah, I have a bit of a shoe problem. Definitely commit. I have a problem. That's as Don knows, it's about as far as I can get. Never going to do anything about it except buy more shoes. And just super, super excited to be a part of this. And as everyone is, I'll just echo what everyone has said at this point, that I am really excited to hear what all of you have to say about all these topics, because it's going to be a great show. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And I do have to acknowledge Stephen Granger sitting here from Recall Rabbit in the suburb of Canada called Texas. But he may not be a marketer, but boy, oh boy, does he know his stuff. So thanks for just joining in and watching our experts today. Ian.
Yeah, what is the definition of inclusive marketing to you? Let's start with Monica.
I think that there's so many definitions to inclusive marketing. If I was to zero down on my take on it, it's how you become a voice for everyone to engage with, without segregating specific groups, races, communities. It's about a shared voice. It's about a shared vision that everyone can relate back to.
Cool. Brooke.
Yeah, so 100% echoing what she just said. I actually went this past weekend when I was at a graduation, and that they were talking about commencement. I actually looked at the word commencement, which then, as I was there, I was like, I'm going to look up what inclusive means. I thought I knew, which I think all of us know what it means, but I just took it a step further, and it says broad in orientation, covering or intended to cover all items or services, and then it says including everyone. So at the end of the day, are we including everyone? That means every single person. So are we? I mean, as it was just stated, are we including every gender, every race, every geo? Are we including everything? Now, if you obviously in Chicago, does that mean I'm going to include California? Probably not. But in the area that I'm marketing, am I including every single person, every single thing that needs to, everything? So at the end of this, the very bullet point is including everybody. That's what it means to me.
Claudia, what do you think? I mean, you're from Brazil, so maybe you have a unique perspective there. I think you do, probably.
Yeah, so more than like giving a definition, like just bringing my own experience here, so I can personally attest that the brands that helped me navigate my journey to Canada are the ones that I still love and I still remember. Like brands from the bank that I needed to choose to open my bank account. I had no idea what were the banks available in Canada because they were not present in Brazil. From the car, the minivan that I would buy to fit like my big family of 6. So all this journey, the brands that did a good job talking to me trying to understand my needs and the moments of war are the ones that I really still buy from, right? So this is, in my opinion, inclusive marketing. And it's inclusive marketing nowadays is like a must, mainly here where multiculturalism is in the core of the Canadian society, right? So what I can say is that like one size doesn't fit all when communicating with like diverse audience. And the importance of having different types of messages with different audiences is absolutely key for brands to thrive.
Don, what do you think?
You know, after looking at different forms of inclusive advertising, you look at different religious advertising, very interesting. Then you look at what the different magazines, if you look at Ebony, if you look at Life, if you look at Sports Illustrated, you get a different flavor of what's going on in society very quickly and who's included and who may be excluded. Then you look at automobile advertising, you look at them by brand. You look at automobile advertising like Toyota is very inclusive. You look at Lamborghini or the higher end automotives, and they become more and more male oriented and more athletically inclined when you start to see the people that they have in the ads. And I would ask Claudia if she has seen it, since she's coming from a different society like Brazil, and if it's more of a male-oriented, advertising dominated venue there or not.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually did a case study for Procter and Gamble when I did my MBA on Brazil, and they talked about a laundry detergent. So there was two markets they were focused on: the wealthy market that had washing machines, and the less affluent market that actually washed clothing in rivers. So they had two totally different product categories, and they were trying to figure out how to not only gain market share, but also to look at packaging and say, okay, how can we appeal to people that maybe aren't literate but like bright packaging? It was kind of interesting. Not being that familiar with Brazil myself, but it was kind of interesting to look at that sort of market segmentation from a strictly large global brand perspective. But go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it's some very good points here. My next question actually pertains to who should handle it, but I had to make a comment on the fact that when we talked about inclusive marketing, we were talking about people and all the different people out there, and how do we appeal to everybody or somebody or whatever. But it's more than just who's out there with us. You just mentioned, Brazil and marketing soap. We would never dream here to have a different type of a soap for different purposes. But moving right along, it's probably a little bit controversial here, but does it matter who handles the marketing as far as the person, not the education or the experience? So does it really matter? And I'm actually going to hit this right hard. Let's go to Brooke, because she's got the biggest concerned look on her face.
Well, I think it's yes and no. Is that, like you said, education or experiences that, yeah, that doesn't, I call it the oh shit moment. We kind of go on that education portion, because the most of us didn't start in this industry. It was like, oh shit, I got to find something to do. Now I'm in the auto industry, and now we stayed with it because it's been so good to us. So when it comes down to that, I don't care if you're male, female, or something in between. I don't care. All I care about is you do your job well, and you look at the facts and not the feelings portion of it, and that you're using that to say, okay, here's where we're going to target next. I don't care who does it, as long as they're good at their job. So when it comes to, to me, it's not a controversial question, because all I care about is that you're doing your job and you're looking, I'm repeating myself, but you're doing what needs to be done. And it doesn't matter what your background is. I think too often is that we, not necessarily on this panel, but a lot of people do look at that, what you just said, the education experience portion of it. And you shouldn't look at that. It is the life experience, and that you're looking at all of those things to say, this is where we need to target. This is where we need to go. And those are the things that where we need to go with that.
Okay, that's a very good point. Claudia, what's your opinion on that? Does it matter, again, who handles, what person handles it versus their knowledge?
Yeah, I really think I'm a big fan of like diverse teams. I think like regardless the gender of the background, people can do a good job, but diverse teams can do a better job, right? So, and this is why the companies are so into looking for like inclusion and diversity in their like own staff, because this is how we're going to mirror what's happened in the consumers, right? And this is I'm gonna like bring my example again, because I think I have been facing that, right? So I'm the only newcomer in the C-suite of Google Canada, and it's interesting. It's not that like my point of views and my perspectives are like better or worse than others, but they are different. They really enable conversations that probably will never happen if there wasn't a Brazilian woman just throwing her background and her like experience that are not part of like the discussions that you're having, right? So that's why regardless gender, having like a diverse staff or like team, it's so good like for innovation, for inclusivity, and for diversity of like the marketing communication, and even for like internal decisions, right? And we see more and more like bringing these new perspectives are like really help to have better solutions to our clients.
Yeah, that's certainly, oh, I don't know if I've lost the audio. Are you speaking? I got a bad connection with you.
No, I stopped speaking.
Oh, good. I didn't want to talk over you. But it's very funny though, because we got into this topic of you came from Brazil to Canada. You're obviously a marketing person because that's your field. And but it's a totally different view on things. You said right down to the point, we would think we're going to market minivans to women with large families. And the minivan here is much different than the minivan in Brazil, I'm assuming, just based on your comment. So therefore, if diversity or inclusivity is more than just men or women, or the way people view themselves, how they identify, it goes further than that. It's culture and everything, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah. Great. I'm going to turn to Claudia because I'm going to leave Dawn till the end, make him squirm. Not Claudia, sorry, Monica. What's your opinion on this?
Just to echo Claudia's sentiments, I agree. The more diversity you have on your team, the broader your mind goes. The broader your mind, you can learn from other people and the way they see things and from their background and their experience. Which, if you don't have that kind of diversity, you don't have those shared experiences on the team. And if you don't have those shared experiences on the team, you're missing a huge segment of the market because you just can't connect with them because you don't know how, because you don't have a connection within your team to do that. So I think it's super important to make sure that there is that diversity on your team, just to expand your mind and to expand other team members' minds. My dad would always say this, is that when you can understand more than one language, you have now another toolkit to express emotion, to express different ways of just different parts of your life. So if you take that same concept, how language broadens your mind, it's the same thing on a team. When you have diversity, people from different cultures and genders and all different types of backgrounds, that also creates diversity within your mind. And now you can actually showcase that talent outwards when you're communicating things. So I think it's extremely important.
That's a great point. And we think people tend to think that those in the southern US tend to be less, a little bit less viewpoint as far as focused on diversity, be it whatever. Yet it certainly is a melting pot. Yet we have some of our most opinionated or focused people on diversity come to us from there. And I'm not saying Dawn is focused on diversity, but Dawn, being in Florida, what is your opinion on this? Does it really matter who it is, or is it the education and experience?
I think it's really the education and experience. I agree very much with Monica and Claudia, especially their points of view. You had, being that my practice is all about team building, building teams has been my success. It's about the diversity that I've found in people that you hire and you learn from. And if you're able to use that experience in your marketing, that means it's almost time for me to go. You probably heard enough from me. No, I'm only kidding. That you're using your experience in order to reach people or to develop your messaging. I think that's smart, and I think that's required. Florida is kind of a crazy place to be right now. We're in the middle of all kinds of culture wars. We have our governor is at war with Disney, which I don't really understand any of that, but that's what's going on. As crazy as that might seem, anybody that grew up from the 50s and watching Mickey Mouse and Disneyland and all that stuff, or having been to Disney and visiting it, it's pretty much all about diversity and how they take care of people and do everything everything they can possibly do to make the customer experience world-class experience, for whether you're there for a day or for a week.
Yeah, well, actually, I tell you, I think Disney was one of the very first organizations to address diversity. And the fact is, we had to realize that, and Brooke, I'm going to tell you, you're nodding, but you're not going to get this, guess this one, because we had to include mice and dogs and ducks and all that sort of stuff, and recognize the fact that they have feelings too. I'm sorry, I had to say it. Ian, take it away.
Is exclusive marketing a valid thing? And what does the term really mean? Like, what do you think there? Let's start with Brooke.
Yeah, so when I really started to think about this, and maybe I'm taking a different direction, maybe I'm not, but this is how I took it, that if you're going to do something exclusively marketing wise, I'm thinking you're doing a certain campaign for something, whether that be OTT wise, or maybe if you're a Ford dealership and you're doing a Ford truck month, or hey, even the very first video that was shown, hey, this is what we're going to do specifically for females, or specifically for males, or specifically for whatever it may be. That's what comes to my mind when I hear that question. But that's the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear that question. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, and especially in a cookieless world, that makes how we go about doing that. It makes our job more fun and interesting on how we go about doing that, because of whether that's Facebook or however that may be. Is just how we go about and say, this message goes to this person, this message goes to this person. But once again, including everyone, but making that message specific, the right time, at the right place, with the right message for that person.
Yeah. Monica, what do you think?
Yeah, very much to what Brooke was saying is that you're not. I think a lot of times our mind goes to the opposite of inclusive marketing, is that we're leaving people out. But I think in the marketing world, we have to come back to who our target market is. And so if our target market is very specific to whatever we're selling, it has to be an exclusive market. We have to do exclusive marketing. And so I think there's a negative connotation to what exclusive marketing is. And I don't think actually that if you look at from a marketer's point of view, there are points that we do have to do exclusive marketing when we're specifically like similar to Claudia, she's from Brazil. And when what you had given the example about the Tide detergent, that wouldn't work in Canada. That's exclusive marketing that exclusively works in Brazil. And so I think there are points that exclusive marketing needs to happen. It makes sense to happen. It's more places like Canada, where a multicultural, very diverse country, the USA, that we have to start thinking broader. But that doesn't mean that in specific countries like Brazil, like China, there's going to be very niche markets that we have to understand how they work, how their psyche works, and that's going to be very inclusive.
And actually, if I can put my 2 cents in there, something that entered my mind is the fact is Brazil has got double or triple, well, maybe double, close to double the population of Canada, and which therefore is about half the population of the US. and or somewhere in there. So there's a whole different group of people there, I would imagine, just depending on where they live there. Just like here, frankly, I don't think selling fresh salmon in Alberta works just as well as it here for tourists.
Well, Chloe, I think it's around 200 million. Am I correct?
Yeah, 200 million people in Brazil.
Yeah.
Much more.
Okay,
than
it's
that,
way
yeah.
more than double Canadian. But we're double the size of land.
Yeah.
More than double. Yeah. So, what do you think, Claudia?
I think exclusive marketing sometimes can be hard if you want to be very specific, but understanding like among the minorities that you want to communicate, what are the important ones for your business, and having a customized communication with them could work very well. So, for example, South Asian communities in Canada. So they are like a minority that is like they're big groups for that. And you have several brands, not auto brands, but like several brands like CPG companies and even like McDonald's restaurants that are having like some customized communications with them, even like picking the language and trying to target to this specific audience. So these become very relevant to this audience, right? So I think like the exclusive marketing is like a new term for me. It's more like the inclusivity of what we are doing, figuring out what are like the important groups that are going to target with relevance. And the digital marketing is like the best way to do that. Because even with like all the privacy concerns, there are several signs, signals that you can use to leverage the quality of the communication to make sure that you're communicating to this specific group. So the more customized it is, the best, like for the business results, as long as you understand the importance of these audiences to your businesses.
And actually, to pipe in there in that one too, you just made a point here. Even though we're looking for exclusive marketing, there's a lot of risk there, because if we look at the automotive industry, the stats you all know way better than I do that the amount of women that affect the decision is massive, and even when they're marketing traditionally male products, pickup trucks with lifts and big tires and loud exhausts, etc. You just market that to the guy. I saw one on TV today where their GM's introducing a new pickup, and they show these two guys out in the rough, and it's got these special shocks and tires, and they're boom, boom, boom. And then they got to go back to work, and they go up on the top of the hill, they turn on the Wi-Fi, and I'm sitting there going, that guy, and forgive me for this one, that guy didn't buy that truck on his own. Even if it was his business, even if he owned his business and ran his business, he didn't do it on his own because his business manager is female and life manager, whatever, and says, hold it, dude. You don't need to spend an extra 20 grand on that stuff. And by the way, if I catch you working on top of a mountain instead of living up to your responsibilities, you're in trouble. So tell me, by the way, I have to acknowledge that Don did have to dash. He gave us as much time as he possibly could, and he didn't just tune out. So what is the biggest mistake? I love to use the term blunder because I love it. What is the biggest blunders you see dealers doing in marketing today? And I'm going to go back to Monica on that one.
That's a good question. And you know what, where my head goes is the OEM commercials that you see on TV. So you'll see the beautiful car, and now you see one person from each community in that car. Because they have to be inclusive. They have to make sure that they're not leaving anyone out. But in reality, does that happen? It almost looks like you're trying too hard. So it has to be natural. It has to be something that actually happens. I think there's better ways of doing it. I do appreciate that people are recognizing that we need more diversity in our commercials, in our advertising, in our marketing. So we're speaking to the multiculturalism in our country. However, it shouldn't seem so forced. It should seem something a little bit more natural. So I guess reestablishing what inclusivity means and how we communicate that we acknowledge all of the communities, genders, societies, communities in our country, but maybe in more of a subtle way, not so obvious. That's my take on it.
Well, it's interesting how you brought that up because I'm a little bit critical on anything like that that just looks like they're trying way too hard to be inclusive and everything else. And it's funny because here, I don't know if it's Subaru Canada or it's just Subaru all over, but there's a really great Subaru commercial, and where there's a whatever it is, and going through the mud and everything. You cannot see inside the car. The wipers are going, and it's, you know, up and down mountains and everything else. And it pulls up in front of a building. A valet comes out, and out comes a woman, but I'm going to, you know, not what somebody would expect as far as another culture woman or different culture other than what you white person gets out in an evening gown, and the valet looks at the car and goes, and so that one does not look like it's, in my opinion, doesn't look like it's trying too hard. What examples of some can you think of, Monica?
You know, I can't draw an example of exactly of an OEM.
I'm going to put you on the spot with that one.
Yeah, you did. And I'm not calling out the OEMs right now. But you know what? Pay attention to the next ad commercial that comes out. You'll see it. You'll see it. Actually, it's interesting. In advertising in general, since the Black Lives Matter movement, 55% of advertisers that are in the media majority of the time have increased their visibility, minority visibilities in their ads overnight since the Black Lives movement happened. Now, a year later, or a year, 2 years later, that after the movement was at its peak, that's dropped now to only 10%. So it was like, oh, you know what? People want to see this. It's important. We want to be inclusive. Oh, it's the trend is over. Let's go back to our old ways. That's not inclusivity.
Yeah, that's for darn sure. Claudia, what do you think? So taking off what Monica said there, are you seeing more, and it's dealers actually, I don't really notice dealers ads being overly one way or the other unless they're focusing in those neighborhoods where they live. But do you see first of all, do you see dealers, I guess the OEMs too are trying too hard? And then secondly, what is the biggest blunder you see, except on Google stuff, because we know that Google corrects every blunder?
Yeah, so I think like the big mistake is still working with like mass marketing, as if it was like 50 years ago when like just having a TV commercial to reach 90% of your audience, we're done, checked. So this is what I think it needs to change. But we see like OEMs starting to do like some efforts with that. Last year we had Nissan Rogue launch, and it was very interesting how they approached the campaign. So it was like an online video first campaign. So instead of like creating for TV and bringing this to the digital format, they started like with the digital format, and after they adapted to the TV commercial ones. And when they're creating like the online video ones, they were really worried about the audience that they would reach. So big families, small families, women, adventure, and things like that. And they had like variations of their ads according to the audience that they wanted to reach. And like the campaign results were like very successful. We have like an external business case with that, like great sales results, great awareness and consideration results, because that was like one of the goals. So that was like an interesting one, because normally, traditionally, you have like this mass marketing working. And they started with like the segmented one and after went to the massive one, right? So this is the kind of things, again, that the online media can help and can enable, right? Because there are like several ways to have different cuts of your like a TV ad or like a video ad according to the audience, how we're going to start the video, how we're going to end the video, how we're going to have the call out. And this can be done by dealers too, right? And even the dealer side, we have like a research that we hired last year. And women, they are the female car buyers, they are more willing to go to dealers to do test drives than men, and they are more loyal to their dealers when they understand the value of it. So there is like a bunch of nuances on the female behavior compared to the male. It's not just to be man or woman, but how they decide on their purchase cycle that could be used in the way that dealers and OEMs are communicating to women, for example, and other types of audiences too. So I think there is a big effort. I see good things coming up. It's not easy because we're just breaking a mindset of working with mass media that have been working well for the last 100 years, but consumers are changing, and the consumption, the media consumption is changing. And if advertisers don't change the way they're communicating, they're gonna lag behind, and the results won't come with that.
That is, I learned something. I love it because I learned something for every show. But that was a big one because us in the car business, we'll talk men, because what the heck. I never realized that women are much more comfortable going in and test driving a car than men are. And that is totally opposite to what we see so much of. And Ian and I are quite embedded into the the automotive stuff, again being a little bit narrow focused on this stuff. And all we see people teaching, all we see them talking about is women at dealerships must be treated better because they're intimidated by the process, and you should do this different. And in reality, it sounds like the men are intimidated by the process, and the women are much more open to going in and dealing with it head on. And I'm overwhelmed. I'm actually happily overwhelmed.
Well,
Jeff, if I could, sorry, Ian. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
No, I have some interesting data points of this car auto female buyers. Can I share with you 1 minute only just for you to see
You
what
can share
the other
5 minutes because we're all affixed. You're fixed on it.
Okay, so the female buyer today is more likely to replace their old car with a new car than men. Female new car buyers consider more to buy SUVs compared to males. So females are more likely to buy SUV, 59% versus 52% of males. Females are 10% more likely than their male counterparts to switch brands. If an EV is part of the consideration set of women, then they are 1.2 times more likely to buy an EV compared to male counterparts. Dealer visits and test drives are valued more useful for female buyers than male buyers. Female buyers are 10% more likely to stick with a dealer if they have an experience with before. So these are just some data points of this research. So there are little nuances that can make a difference when we're communicating properly, right?
That's
So that last point, you said so if they had an experience with a dealer before, that's a positive experience, they're more likely to stay with. Is that what you said?
Yeah, than men.
Okay, so the men are less impacted by a negative experience?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
A couple off of that, there's even words that you can say if it's a male versus female versus Gen X versus millennial, the words that you say back to them, whether it's an email, whether it's in text, that makes a huge difference on whether they buy from you, whether you retain the customer. It is so insanely vital, the words that you say to them, how you converse with them. And if you say that one word, that magic word, that could make or break the deal. And as she just pointedly said, whether they come back to you, it's the magic of words is astronomical.
I'm going to write that down because you know what, that is so true. And I am not texting anybody. It's actually a phenomenal point. And we all know wording. I mean, car people understand wording, understand word tracks, but heck, it's a way different word track depending on who you're dealing with. And I'm actually going to say that you've got the first divide, men versus women. Now you got the second divide, which is what is that person's background? And if you have somebody from a different culture, like again with Claudia here, if they're from Brazil, some of the words that we'll say are just, you got to be careful. And the biggest blunder, and before we move on, the biggest blunder in the automotive industry was Chevy decided to sell Novas in Brazil, I believe. And I think translated into Portuguese, Nova means no go. Is that right, Claudia? And that was a huge failure.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. We had a gentleman on the show from Italy. He's wrote a really interesting article a number of years ago now on OEM advertising in Italy and how it offended women because it was so sexist. And it was a cultural faux pas, really. It was a mistake because when you looked at the breakdown of car buyers in that country, it was much higher percentage of women influencing the decision than men. And the ads were blisteringly sexist, like to the point where it was like, whoa, like what are these people doing? But it was very much a cultural bias, I think. I mean, that was the whole article was about. I mean, here's an ad from Toyota that if they played here, they'd get, the corporate headquarters that have a big problem. But, it was really interesting because he was really talking about how behind the times the OEMs in Italy were versus the rest of the world, that they were able to do stuff that maybe they couldn't do in North America, but they weren't doing it in alignment with the actual customer base, which was really, really interesting, especially as you fast forward today. And we're probably talking 5 to 10 years ago now, probably 5 years, where basically the global shift in how you market to people is changing. The question is, how does that, is it adapted today? I mean, obviously, all three of the people on the panel are women. I mean, what's your impression of how dealers and OEMs are changing to adapt to the fact that, obviously women are buying cars probably at equal or higher pace, and to our video earlier, are much bigger influencers in the decision than I think even people in car dealerships realize. What is your opinion, Monica? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's really changing, and it's continuing to change, and we have to kind of ride the wave of understanding what those changes are, so we can incorporate them in our communication.
Brooke, what do you think?
And I think right now, and I think we all can speak of this, is how many are actually doing it from a high level down to the dealership level, is how many are doing this. I mean, I can go back to, I want to say 3-4 years ago, that I was writing articles about this, of saying, okay, I'm going into training and is saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Dealership, are you going back? Are you using these words? Are you, when you market, are you using these, are you using these type of techniques? Because this is going to help you sell more cars. Well, I don't think we need to do that. Well, why wouldn't you? And going back to what you're talking about earlier, it's not a, hey, in neon lights, we're going to put a woman in here. We're going to put someone that's not white. I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying, what are you doing to speak about this? If you're talking to this type, if you're talking to this person, how are you changing your verbiage? How are you changing this? Because the cookie cutter marketing isn't the way we sell cars or sell anything. It doesn't matter what you're selling. That's not how you do things. But, oh, that's the way we've always done it. I'm sorry, bullshit. That doesn't work anymore. It's not. If you want to keep doing that, great. Go ahead and be a Blockbuster. That worked great for Blockbuster. So keep doing the way you did things. That's not how it's going to get things done. So I guess we can say all these great things, but Monica, I think it was you. You were talking about how 55% jumped on and said, hey, oh yeah, we're going to jump on and do all these great things and be part of it. And then, yeah, that was a flash and a flash in the pan. Yeah. Kudos for you. Kudos for you for putting a little I voted sticker on you, and good for you. It was all BS, and it was just lies and propaganda, because none of that stayed forward with any of it. So if you're going to do something, do it because it's the right thing to do and you actually believe in it, because at the end of the day, your consumer is going to see through all of that crap and know that you're just full of it. You're 100% full of it, because it's not down to the core of who you are. It's going to come through, because we can all be on here and our personality is going to come through. But when someone meets us and says, man, you're nothing like who you are on the screen, you're just lies and propaganda, Brooke. Like, I'm not going to follow you anymore. I don't want to listen to you anymore. Your consumer is going to see that too. So I kind of got my soapbox there a little bit, but I just go back to is if anyone's really doing this, and are they really doing it for the right purpose? Because the consumer is going to see through it real quickly.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of the transition as OEM after OEM talks about, and politician after politician talks about electric cars. What does that mean in the long term? Like we're seeing a lot of movement on both sides of the spectrum from Ford Motor Company at the moment. We'll see how that goes for them. But it's interesting to see as you look at global automakers going, okay, yeah, we're going to invest XYZ billions into this. Is that a long-term strategy? And how does that go from a marketing point of view? How are you segmenting that marketing to intenders? I mean, there's been a lot of correlation in the media recently around gas prices and electric car adoption. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of aligns with, marketing, but more importantly, the OEM strategies and then their relationships with dealers. But Claudia, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I really like Brooks' point, and the brands need to be authentic, right? When it's not authentic, the consumer feels it, and you have like the opposite effect of this. And one thing that, in my opinion, is the most important is knowing who is your client, knowing who is your customer, right? So customer research, super important. Talking to them, being like vulnerable and open to learn from them, and bringing to the point that I brought, going back to the point that I brought in the beginning, have a team that will understand these other perspectives and are not only all the same with same background and same gender, to interpret the data and like work on that, right? So we need to work for our clients, and the more you know your clients, the better you'll be able to serve. I'm going to give you another last example of like my experience when I first visited a dealer here. So the leasing thing in Brazil is not a common thing. So, and that was new to our family, right? So when we got there, we finally, after all the research I did, I decided what would be the brand that I would buy. Like the person in the dealership was like forcing me to go to a leasing, and I felt bad. I felt like as I was in a trap, and I started like connecting my friends here in Canada. Should I do that or no? I was like willing to pay cash, and I couldn't like trust. So actually, that was like a trust issue that I had with this person in the dealership, because he didn't understand that for me that was something new, that I wasn't understanding like the benefits for this, because he didn't spend the time understanding so what I had in mind, like to like how to pay the car and things like that. So, and I gave up, and I went to another dealership and closed with another one, right? So that was my experience, because the person there wasn't open to understand how I thought and what I wanted at that time, right? And in my opinion, this is how brands need to think about. Okay, let me understand what is on my client's mind, and let me solve for their problems. Let me be helpful. This is how they're going to win. This is how they're going to sell more products, right?
100%. Monica, you had a comment, I think. At least that's what Jeff was saying.
Sorry?
Monica, you had some thoughts?
Well, I just wanted to add to what Brooke said. I think, and Claudia, is that being authentic in any brand, no matter what you're selling, is the key to your foundation of marketing. Like, if you are not communicating who you really are and you're pretending to be something else that you're not, customers, consumers, your end user, they can see through that so quickly. So I think if we look at everything, the foundation of everything that we're talking about is be authentic. Be authentic to who you are and create a brand based on that, because you can never go wrong off of that. You will always, no matter what you're trying to communicate, but what authentically lives in that brand, it will always be communicated in one way or the other. So just back to my point, when the Black Lives movement had happened, and all of these advertisers had gotten, you know, gone and found people of exclusivity, or trying to be more exclusive in their advertising, and then dropped it. They were never, that was never part of their belief system to begin with. And so, in how many other ways are we doing that when it's not just based on exclusivity? Where else are we doing that? Are we over promising and under delivering? And I think this is something that every brand, not just car dealerships, need to examine, to make sure that they understand themselves what their authentic brand is, and make sure that their building blocks of marketing is built on that, not just something that they want to portray. because that doesn't last. Just like Brooke said, we're not stupid. We can see right through it. You got to be more transparent than that. And the second that you create that doubt, your credibility of your brand is down the toilet now. And now you have to rebuild it, which is very difficult. Just like the whole Nova example, right? You can't come back from that. It takes a long time.
It's a very interesting thing that I put together with the three of you just said a few minutes ago. And it reminded me there's a dealer who shall remain nameless, who does one of the traditional, not traditional, the old-fashioned car dealership thing. Alrighty, and they advertise on cultural media. They're on the Chinese station, the Indian station, the et cetera, stations. And they've dubbed in that language into this ad. And I don't understand all these different languages, but I'm going to tell you something. We love you more than dogs love hot dogs. Does not translate well into all these languages. And I have to say, I get a laugh because you see the spokesperson from these different stations translating it, and that when they talk like this does not translate well. It doesn't sound good. And when you say being authentic, that's not authentic. That's saying, hey, I want to be multicultural, but I don't want to do another ad. So it's two white guys sitting there with they're not, but with the tiger and a clown. And I'm sure there's some cultures that tigers are very either sacred or super scary, and clowns, well, we know a lot of people are scary, terrified of clowns.
So
just to put my 2 cents in.
So any final thoughts on marketing and inclusivity? Why don't we start with Brooke? 1 second.
Sorry, I just got something like trying to clear my throat. I didn't want to do it like on air and like right in the microphone. It would have been a fun little thing there. No, I think at the end of the day is we've hit on a lot of, inclusive. I can't even say the word at this point. And that's how, pent up it is at this point, but just being inclusive, that is very, 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 very key. I think we've beat this horse quite a bit at this point, but just be inclusive 100%. It makes sure that your teams are diverse. Please, I'm begging with everyone. I guess if that's not in your DNA, you're not going to do it. And if you do, and it's not in your DNA, it's going to fall flat. I also want to make sure that we don't also forget the fact that please use data to get where you're going. If you're shooting from your hip, oh, it's a bright shining object I saw at a 20 group, and so we're going to use it. Why are you using it? That's the other thing, is that why you have this awesome and incredible team that's made up of a lot of diverse people, but to get, as was said so great by Claudia, is that now you get all these different backgrounds to say, hey, this works here, because what works in Chicago isn't going to work, in California, or may not work even in Wisconsin. So having all this diverse background, but then saying, hey, now we have this armed with all the data, we can use this, not just because it's some bright shiny tool that's so and so told us about. So that's my 2 cents on things.
Monica, any final thoughts?
Yeah, even back to what Brooke is saying is going back to the data. I know Google provides so much data for every country and how they react to specific ads. There is a ton of data out there when you're trying to make your advertising inclusive. And so I think it's about understanding what that means, finding your authentic brand, and then there's a marriage of making sure that whatever that data that you've read, that you've seen, that you're trying to make decisions from, actually authentically fits into what your messaging, your communication, who you really stand for is, and not forgetting that piece too. They have to work together.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Claudia, on data and marketing, I guess.
Yeah, I think we all got to the same conclusion, so it's good. I think there are 3 important things here. One is like diverse people and diverse staff. Know your client, and digital and data and advertising is key for that. And third, be authentic. So this, I think, will be the 3 key messages out of this conversation. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Jeff?
Well, I got to tell you something. I obviously always enjoy our shows, and I have now lost my screen. There we go. I always enjoy this, and ladies, you've given You've given me some great food for thought. Ian and I have something coming up where we're going to be addressing some people, and I have to just go back in and change some of the wording we're going to use, not to change it because it was bad, but to change it because it needed to be better. And so I thank you very much. While our show is for the good of dealers and other people, it certainly did me some tremendous good today. And we didn't have as much laughs as when Larry Feldman's on, but that's good. Somebody else got to speak. So thank you. Tremendous information. I appreciate you taking the time, more than I can tell you, and what you shared with us, and what you've taught me is super duper valuable.
Thanks for that Brazilian thought. I sort of brought back that whole project, which was quite interesting. But more importantly, I met people years ago from Brazil on the finance side of auto at a conference in Vegas, which was quite interesting. Just because when I go to NADA, there's always a large contingent. Not so much this year because of issues with Russia and other things, but definitely it was very interesting to hear that point of view comparing Canada to Brazil, but more importantly, looking at data. I think that's the key takeaway that most people don't look at with marketing. They just market and hope it works out. I mean, you really got to data. But have yourself a great week. Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you. Bye bye.